Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you a book review from the classic series OG62, and it's book number 60, Werewolf Skin. I'm going to say this right now, this is my favorite Goosebumps book of all time. As a kid, this was not my favorite book, but since I've gotten back into collecting and reading the series, I actually reread this one about a month or two ago, and I was hooked. I was like, yeah, this is my favorite story. This is just a perfect storm for me in my personal taste. It has a backable protagonist, which I really love. It has a fun atmosphere and setting, Halloween theme going for it, even though it's not really the most Halloween book there is. It's very dark, very twisted. It has a shocking ending, very good pace from start to finish story, suspense filled, very unique premise with the werewolf skin idea in this story. It's just awesome. This whole book just exudes awesomeness, and if I had like a figurative zenith of Goosebumps, for me, it's this book. It just has everything I'm looking for. And yeah, this is hands down my favorite werewolf story and my favorite Goosebumps story ever. I'm doing this werewolf review-a-thon with Michael Goosebumps fan and Monster Blood. I recently watched Michael Goosebumps fan's video and what he thought about the book. Yeah, I can understand why you think it's your favorite. It's my favorite too. Monster Blood, however, doesn't have this book as his favorite, which is fine. But yeah, it's something about this story that really captures me, and it really gets me happy to be a Goosebumps fan in a way. And I'll have the link to their channels in the description of this video, like normal, since I've been doing this review-a-thon. So let's get into the plot overview without giving too much away. There's a lot of stuff that happened in this story. It's a very linear story, like I said, but there's so much details. I'm going to try to cover as much as I can without giving too much away, okay? So all you need to know is this kid named Alex has to temporarily live with his aunt and uncle because his parents get called on assignment to Europe. And his aunt and uncle are photographers like himself. He's like an avid photographer kid. He's like a photo geek. He's into all of that stuff. But the only problem is they live in the middle of nowhere in this town called Wolf Creek, which, Alex is a city kid. He's used to all this action. Getting transplanted to a small town atmosphere isn't really something he would want to do off the bat. So he gets off the bus and he looks around and he sees how creepy this place is, and he thinks back to when he was reading a magazine that has a photo contest for a scariest photo for around Halloween. The winner gets $1,000. And he has this bright idea. He's going to take a scary photo in this place. He's going to find something scary, and he's going to win that $1,000. Before you know it, he runs into his aunt and uncle at the bus station near this gas station, the only gas station in town kind of place, and they pick him up. Since it's around Halloween, his Aunt Marta asked him, what do you want to be for Halloween? And he said he would really like to be a werewolf because, Wolf Creek, he was reading this magazine, he saw this really cool werewolf. He had werewolves on the mind. And his Uncle Colin has this weird reaction to that, and he almost wrecks the car and kills everybody. But, Alex was kind of shaken up, and Marta, chewed Colin out a little bit. But eventually they arrive home safely. And Marta and Colin lay down some ground rules with Alex. There's only 2 rules while you stay here temporarily for a couple weeks or maybe a few months, who knows how long. And the first rule is the house next door that looks abandoned isn't abandoned. It has a family by the name of the Marlings that live there. They're very mean people. Stay away from that house. And rule number 2, do not go in the woods after dark. So Alex, being a city kid, he's kind of a skeptic. He's like, I really don't believe that, I really don't believe in rules and orders, but, I guess I'll follow that. He's kind of like spoiled, I guess, from his normal parents, and his reaction to Marta and Colin's rules is like, you're not my mom and dad. But that's typical, right? That's typical behavior. His Aunt Marta encourages him to meet this girl named Hannah. She's really nice. She's kind of cute. Maybe he'll like her, and maybe they could be friends. And sure enough, he does. And they hit it off the bat, and they just start chatting, and they wander into the woods with daylight still around. And they're talking about Wolf Creek and about Halloween coming up and all of that. And they bump into these two kids named Sean and Arjun, which, lo and behold, are bullies. And they start picking on Alex for having a camera around his neck. And, Alex has some witty banter. He has a personality that you'll really enjoy in this story. He has some bite to him. If you say something smart to him, he has something better in his back pocket to hit you back with. and I just love him for that. So Sean and Arjun are kind of like the bumbling buffoons in the story. So Sean and Arjun take his camera and mess with him and say, well, there's really werewolves in the woods, right? And, Alex is like, stop yanking my chain. You guys are just blowing smoke. And they say, okay, well, we got to get going because it's almost dark. It's not safe in the woods after dark. So they leave. And then, of course, Hannah leaves. And then Alex leaves. And when he goes back to his aunt and uncle's house, he notices something weird going on near the Marlings' house, and he wants to take a snapshot of it, but he realizes he left his camera out in the woods where Sean and Arjun probably dropped it, so he has to sneak out of his aunt and uncle's house to go get his camera. And when he finds his camera, he notices a dead animal carcass, and it's like tore up to bits, and it's pretty jarring in the description of that. Alex is like, what on earth could have done this? And then he hears some howling noises. He gets spooked and he wants to go back. But when he goes back, he notices that there's some trail marks in the soil that kind of lead towards the Marlings' house. So he wants to go inspect, but then he hears some weird noises and he gets spooked and he wants to go inside and run and hide. Eventually he falls asleep, and the next day it cuts to a part of the book where his aunt gets a call from the Marlings saying that they saw Alex outside the night before and they did not appreciate him on their property. His aunt scolds Alex for doing that and disobeying the rules. Alex then goes to school for the first time because it is around Halloween. He's going to be there for a while. School is still in session, so he has to go to school. He's in school with Sean, Arjun, and Hannah, and he meets his teacher, which also bring up werewolves. And then, of course, Sean and Arjun kind of make a bet with Alex, saying, well, hey, meet us at the woods at this time tonight, and we'll show you that werewolves exist. And Alex is like, okay, I'll be there. And what happens is he goes to, they make a bet, right? So Alex really wants to leave, but he can't because he gets locked in his room. And he gets mad because now he's like, well, Sean and Arjun are just going to, call me a chicken. I'm going to get bullied even further by these kids. He feels defeated a little bit, and he's kind of upset with his aunt and uncle. So the next day, he gets mad and says, why'd you lock me in? And they say it's for your own safety. And he's like, okay, that's fine. Of course, he meets up with Sean and Arjun, and Sean and Arjun say, well, we were going to prank you and not even show up, so you would be out there by yourself. And Alex is kind of like, you know what? This is bogus. And you know what? I'm going to tell them that I saw a werewolf just to rub it in. And of course, Alex lies and said, hey, look, I found a werewolf. I have a picture. And they're like, well, where's the picture evidence? He's like, well, I have it developing back at my aunt and uncle's house. I'll show you the picture. So now that he's lied, he feels like he has to get a picture of something scary, because he still hasn't done that for the contest that he wants to enter. So he puts a piece of gum in his door. His aunt and uncle shut the door on him, trying to lock him in. And he figured out a way to get out and still sneak out. And while he sneaks out, he posts up somewhere where he can see a werewolf. Sure enough, he sees a werewolf. Not just one, but two. They hear him, and he has to run back to his aunt and uncle's house. And he's like, oh, werewolves are real. He's very spooked about this, and he's like keeping a watchful eye. Basically can't sleep the rest of the night. So what happens is, a little bit later, he notices that the wolves went back into the Marlings' house. Now he knows that the wolves are somehow linked to the Marlings. He now thinks that the wolves are the Marlings. Then, of course, there's another revelation that happens a little bit later that kind of gives the identity of who these werewolves are and what exactly the premise of the werewolves do. Now, the premise of the werewolves is pretty cool and pretty unique. The premise is they wear these, they get marked, right? And then after their first full moon, they shed their skin, and they have to keep wearing their skins. Some type of like addiction metaphor going on until, while the full moon is around. And if they don't wear the skin until the full moon is at its highest point, then the curse gets lifted. But basically, you find out who the werewolves are. Alex and Hannah now have to come up with a plan to cure these werewolves. So they break into the house and they find these werewolf skins basically neatly put in the house. And they come up with this plan to use them and keep them away from whoever the werewolves are. And sure enough, some funny stuff happens. This all takes place, this climactic event all takes place on Halloween night, mind you. So Alex gets to, use the werewolf skin kind of like a Halloween costume, so he gets his wish in a way. This whole ordeal happens. It's very bizarre and very weird. I don't want to spoil what happens. But basically, the situation gets resolved, so we think. And then the very end kind of throws a shocking twist into the mix, and that's how the book ends. So yeah, that's basically Werewolf Skin in a nutshell. Off the bat, like I said in the strengths, Alex is a fun character. He's just very witty. He's kind of like a smart kid. He knows, some street smarts. He has a cool hobby of photography. He has some quirks about him that I think are really cool and very unique. Hannah's a good supporting character. Arjun and Sean are actually, pretty funny and sort of original bullies for Goosebumps. And I loved how Colin and Marta are important to this story. All of the characters really worked well. The pacing, like I said, I've said this a couple times in this review, it's very linear. It's from start to finish. And I think that's a strength to this book. Because if it had too much subplot going on, I don't think it would have worked as well. But I really enjoyed the pace to this story. The dark tones in this story there's a lot of metaphors that you'll see throughout the story. But it's very dark, especially for original 62. This is one of the standout dark books from the classic 62. I mean, it's just well done. And it hits my taste because I like darker stuff. I mean, it just hit every note I was looking for. And yeah, I mean, the atmosphere building ability in this story was next level compared to some other Goosebumps books I've read in the past. I mean, it's just a solid book from start to finish. And I have no negatives to say about this story. The shocking twist ending. Some people have said that the ending makes no sense, which I can kind of see their point of view, but it's not too far out of the realm of possibility for me to believe it, so I'm not going to deduct any points, but there should have been some elaboration in a way to kind of maybe help explain it better, but I still think it's still possible, it still works. So yeah, I love this book. This is my favorite Goosebumps book. So from a 0 to 5 stars, I'm giving this thing a 5 out of 5. Easily the best werewolf story I have read in Goosebumps. So let me know in the comment section, guys, did you love or did you hate Werewolf Skin, the book? I'm dying to know, and I'll see you next time.